So, Paramount. It's been sold again. Maybe. This saga might not be over just yet. There's a fly in here trying to kill me. It keeps flying at my face. SKYDANCE came back in with another offer for Paramount Global. Now, what happened basically was SKYDANCE made an offer. Cherie Redstone, who owns National Amusements, went, nah. And that basically put them into a cycle of trying to prepare for a non-sale. Paramount, the business, started to make plans for at least the next 2 years without a new owner. To do that, they desperately needed to cut costs. They desperately needed to generate income. And one of the ideas that was put forward was this SciTrek sale or rental agreement with somebody else. Now, that is actually still a possibility, but I'm going to come back to it in a minute. Where we're at right now is that SKYDANCE have come back in with this offer to buy National Amusements. National Amusements owns a minority stake in Paramount Global, but it does own the bulk, 70-something% of the voting rights. So it doesn't own the entire company, but it owns basically all of the power. So by default, it owns the company. So the plan is, and has always been, that SKYDANCE will buy National Amusements, in effect taking over Paramount. Paramount will then buy SKYDANCE, and the people that currently own SKYDANCE will then run this new Paramount Global. Now, this new deal that they've come back with actually is for less money than they were offering previously. But the way the deal is structured, it actually means that Cherie Redstone and her family get more. Later down the line, all of the other shareholders, etc., get more. So this deal is more likely to actually get agreed, whereas the previous deal was unlikely. There is also, though, a clause in this deal which I find very irritating, because it means I'm probably going to be talking about this again in the future at some point. It has a clause in there that means for a couple of months the books are left open and other interested parties can still bid again. So this saga might not be over just yet. However, this has been agreed by Cherie Redstone and does seem to be moving forwards. So what does that mean for SciTrek? There are two major possibilities here, and SciTrek has been talking to a couple of the people it does get to have conversations with that are inside and really know what's going on different levels. For one, the one person I do get to speak to quite a bit told us here at SciTrek that actually this was a shock. They were basically told that this deal was dead. It was not going to happen and they were not expecting any more bids. This bid really did come in out of the blue, and they were even more shocked when Cherie Redstone announced that it had been accepted. So all of the plans that were in motion to cut costs, to generate income, including this idea, check out the previous video, about potentially putting SciTrek up for rent for 5 years, was seriously being looked at and were being put into motion. There are people over at Paramount right now, bankers, who their main job is to try and generate income and cut costs. They're looking at redundancies, they're looking at selling property, and they're looking at their IP. That probably will continue because all of the companies and all of the people I've spoken to that have insights into the different companies that were looking at Paramount all agreed that Paramount had a lot of fat to cut off. There was way too much property, there was way too much investment needed in certain studios, etc., that just wasn't needed for what they were doing. And there are certain deals, for example, Paramount are apparently negotiating with a couple of companies to sell on studio space. One of them has very strong links to Amazon that we've discussed many times before. So that is a distinct possibility now moving forwards, that a lot of those plans still might happen, and still might happen with the agreement of SKYDANCE. SKYDANCE were apparently one of the companies that were looking at potentially renting SciTrek and taking it off Paramount's hands. So that obviously kind of scuppers that idea, but apparently it was something that was put across in one of the meetings around a month ago. Obviously, The more likely scenario here now is that actually we will continue with the status quo. I spoke to you guys before about if Skydance came in, the chances are, this would have happened if Sony had got in as well, to be honest, that the sale, because it becomes so elongated and becomes so complicated, and because the deal currently with Secret Hideout to produce Star Trek is actually up shortly, the chances are that they would just renegotiate an extension to the existing contract, maybe for 2 or 3 years, allow all the existing projects to sort of be completed, and then decide what to do at that point. I'm being told again that the long-term plan, though, is for this creation of Star Trek Studios, where whoever owns Paramount will buy Alex Kurtzman out of Star Trek, and that they will basically then create this company within a company. The Star Trek is now so big and has so many different arms to it and so many different things going on that it would actually allow Paramount to far more effectively take advantage of it. One of the things it really helps is allowing Star Trek to produce material for other streaming providers like Amazon a little bit more easily than if it's just purely owned by Paramount. So, this Skydance deal came a little bit out of the blue, a little bit left field. But it really does show that there is a keenness still there by Sri Redstone to sell. I'm actually wondering if this was a little bit of a bluff on her part, that she does want to sell, but she let it get out there that, you know what, maybe I'll keep it. Maybe my kids actually still want to have some involvement in Paramount. Maybe I don't want to let go of my legacy this easily and quickly. And that forced Skydance to come up with a deal that was a little bit more favourable on her part, but also forced them to accept this caveat, which means other people can still come in and snake the deal from underneath Skydance. But I do think this is a deal that will be resolved and signed within the next 6 months or so, because there is this finance that I keep talking to you about that I'm being told is roughly worth between $3 to $5 billion of Paramount's current debt that needs to be refinanced. And if that's not done within the next 6 months or so, there is going to be a problem. At the moment, Paramount's plan is to generate anything up to $4 billion worth of cash. This would be used to support refinancing. They'd be able to go to the banks and go, look, we've got money, we've got liquidity, yay! Like when you go to a bank looking for a mortgage. It really helps if you've got a decent deposit. That's basically what Paramount are currently trying to do. They're currently trying to make their business model look far more stable so that they can get their credit score a little higher and get a more favourable loan agreement when that time comes. Interest rates are quite high at the moment. It's going to be cripplingly expensive if they continue the way they're going. So, for Star Trek, we're still in an unknown. There is the plan that I talked about in the previous video that still might happen, that they still might actually sell the intellectual property of Star Trek to a third party who would then produce it for the next few years. It would be a rental agreement. It would be for anything up to $500 million, which would really help with their liquidity issue. And it would also then create a revenue stream for Paramount because they would continue to actually get some of the back end. I think that's probably less likely now the Skydance has come back into it because Skydance has such a vested interest in the movies. There's a fly in here trying to kill me. It keeps flying at my face. With Skydance having such a vested interest in the movie, I just think it makes it less likely that they will want to move forward with this rental agreement. I think they're more likely to want to keep it in-house. I still think they're far more likely to try to go the Star Trek Studios route eventually, particularly as there's probably going to have to be this extension I mentioned earlier to the current Secret Hideout deal. I hear, again, though, that there are ways Kurtzman can be convinced because there are movies he wants to make, and Paramount would be willing to sort of produce some of those in return for him, stepping out of Secret Hideout and creating Star Trek Studios. I actually hear a lot of people at Paramount are really happy with Gene Roddenberry's kid. Rod, is it? And they would really love him to have a more prominent role. The only way that will happen, though, again, is if Kurtzman steps back, because he is quite a dominating character within Secret Hideout. So, it's an uncertain future. Lots of different people in the industry have an opinion on this. SciTrek has spoken to about 15 different people today, and we get a slightly different answer off each of them. Some of them are actually within Paramount, some SKYDANCE, some are just business insiders who obviously have a vested interest in what's going on. And it really does seem that nobody was expecting this, and nobody really knows what's going to happen next. But over here, we will continue to keep our eye on it. We will continue to try to figure out what the hell is going on, and we will continue to try to speculate on what's going to happen next. If you are new to the channel, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification. It really helps us out. You'll never miss any of our new videos. Also, you can go to patreon.com/SciTrek, where most of our new videos do premiere first. Go check it out. As always, please stay safe, and I'll see you next time.